Light Pollution News, August 2026. Sustainable regeneration, or is it regenerative sustainability? This episode of Light Pollution News, you have dark skies. Now what? The role of bats in agave pollination, and what on earth is being built in Saudi Arabia? The answer may look like something right out of Dune. Joining me are three incredible guests: CEO of Dark Sky International, Ruskin Hartley; ecologist, Dr. Kaori Yokochi, and co-host of one of my favorite podcasts, Shane Ludtke. Stay with us as we have all this and more coming up next, including news articles not captured during the duration of the show. So be sure to stay with us after today's closeout and you'll get those articles. It's another episode of Light Pollution News, the show where we talk about all things artificial light and how it affects our environment. I'd like to welcome any new listeners to the show for the first time. You'll definitely want to check out today's show notes or visit our website, lightpollutionnews.com, to see all of the links we talk about today. I'm also glad to announce that we finally accept voicemail. So if you have any thoughts you want to shoot over to us, feel free to hit the voicemail button. You can actually just talk it over to us. We've always accepted show text, but now we actually take voicemails too. There should be a send voicemail link in these show notes. There's going to be show notes on the podcast players. It's not going to be on the website. Give it a try. We'd love to hear from you. Let's jump into it. Let's kick things off with the guests for this episode. Actually, you should know the three guests I have here. They're all the same, but let me get into the first one because we were just talking about, we're recording this during the soccer match between France, or the football match between France and England. I apologize for, international folks out there for offending the beautiful game. But evidently, Ruskin, where are we at? What are we looking at score-wise?
Yeah, England just held on to a 6-4 lead after going into the half 4-0. So France came back, or they held on, and best finish in a World Cup, I think, since 1966. So, not what we wanted, but we'll take it.
It's been a long time, right? So yeah,
it's been a long. It's still a long time.
It's like blood for English, for you guys, for the UK, right? It's like
there's many
it's in your blood,
have
right?
Grown up just dreaming of 1966.
I can't say I think of anything like that. I don't know. Shane, do you have any kind of something that is just in your blood to the point where you have to watch it, you have to pay attention to it? If they win, it changes your whole life.
Yeah, and I try to limit that as I've grown older because I don't like when my sports teams lose and then I have a bad Monday or Tuesday as a result. But I do enjoy NFL football quite a bit and F1 racing, so I get into that quite often.
As long as you're not a Chiefs fan, I'm fine by it, or a Cowboys fan, I'm fine by it. It's all
no.
Good.
I'm more of a Patriots guy.
Okay. Well, that's sad in its own right, but I'll take it. So I've partially introduced two of the guests here. Kaori, what's the sports situation like down in Melbourne? What do you guys root for down there?
Melbourne people are crazy for sports as well, but big thing is Australian football, so AFL. And so, yeah, I'm from Japan. When I moved to Australia, when I saw it first on TV, I was like, what the heck is going on here? Because to me, it looked like just bunch of grown men chasing this one ball that looks like a football rugby ball, but a bit smaller, I think. And it to me looked like they are literally punching each other and kicking each other on the field and just chasing this ball in this ball. But I know it's a lot more than to it than that. So that's massive in Australia, especially in Melbourne. But also, a lot of other things like soccer is definitely, or football. Sorry, in Australia we call it soccer too.
Oh, okay, good. We're not the only ones. Oh, okay.
So I didn't get offended. And in Japan, we call it soccer as well. The soccer is definitely getting big as well. And many, many other sports. For example, we've got tennis, the Australia Open example here as well. So, a lot of sports going on here.
All right. Sometimes this becomes a sports show. It just happens, like I'm over here in Philly and we're a big sports city. And, it's kind of like you, Shane, the Flyers haven't been worth watching now for about 20 some years. This year is the first year that they actually went somewhere. And
I'm a Flyers fan too, actually.
Man.
I'm one of
stars
the few
rising,
Canadians.
Shane, your stars rising.
Yeah, I'm one of the few Canadians, though, where hockey really isn't a priority for me. So.
Well, let me just do a quick introduction of everyone here because we've all been talking now for a little bit. Obviously, Ruskin Hartley, CEO of Dark Sky International, over 20 years of conservation experience. He engages leaders, communities, and how to best preserve and protect nighttime environments. We have Shane, you are a co-host of the Actual Astronomy podcast, one of my regular go-tos. I do love the work you guys do. I also have Dr. Kaori Yokochi, who is a wildlife ecologist from Deakin University down in Melbourne. And Dr. Yokochi studies Australian mammals, specifically focusing on how urban ecology and human impacts affect wildlife. And she's also a member of the Network for Ecological Research on Artificial Light, and also a member of the Australian Dark Sky Alliance. I have some questions real fast. Ruskin, I came across something of your past, and this is not incriminating. Don't worry, buddy. We're good. But one of the things, you had a personal blog at one point, so the world, the internet history may notice, and you talked about some really cool water conservation related items. And it's there's an idea in there that I want to get to. One of the themes involves sustainability versus regenerative resources. Have you taken that idea? How's that idea permeated into your leadership of Dark Sky?
Yeah, I mean, I think it has. And I had to go back and check, Bill. I think the WordPress site is still up, but I had to go and take a look at some of those old blog posts. It makes me want to go back and keep writing, in fact. And I think that the concept here is some areas we have lost so much that it's no longer sufficient just to sustain what we have. But we really need to look at moving beyond sustaining to restoring or regenerating. And I think that is absolutely critical for the dark sky movement. We have lost so much over the last 100 years and even over the last 20 years, even over the last 10 years, that we need to move beyond just protecting natural darkness. We clearly need to protect it where it exists, but we need to move beyond restoring it, kind of in a sense regenerating. And we need to look at each project just not as if we are sustaining the levels that we are, but are we actually taking each of these projects and actually regenerating some of that darkness that is so essential for the world at this time. A silly little aside on this, someone once told me if I came home to my wife and said we had a great marriage, it's very sustainable, I'd get clapped around the ears, right? No one would use that. Like, we need to be vibrant, right? And so we need to move beyond this concept of sustaining when we have already lost so much.
That's a great analogy. That's a takeaway. You at home, if you guys ever need an argument, that's right there.
I can't remember. I wish I could remember who told me that one, but it stuck with me.
Yeah, it's true. It's true.
Well, it's funny that I had a similar conversation with my colleague recently about urban ecology and wildlife in urban areas. And we tend to say, coexist, but that's not enough. Wildlife needs to be thriving rather than just existing and tolerating. And you just gave me a really good example of talking point, Ruskin about, equating to the marriage and saying, we can't just coexist. We should be thriving, right? So I'll be using that. Thank you.
Dr. Yokochi, I do have a question on your end. Like, you came into light pollution, I think, a little further down the road from your research, right? You didn't initially, it wasn't early on. So what drove you to understanding those impacts? Why did you go down that path? What was the interest there?
Almost accidental in a way that I came up on light pollution. I actually came to light pollution from bats. So I started studying bats when I moved to Melbourne from Western Australia, Perth, where I used to be based at. And when I started studying bats and then started talking to community members, and this community member, one of them mentioned, I always wonder what these, lights are doing to the bats. And I was like, oh yeah, sure. I was aware of light pollution, but then that wasn't never part of my focus, I guess. And like, Ruskin and Shane, you have been saying that once you notice this, issue of light pollution, you start to see like there's a lot more to it, and there's so much we don't know. And especially coming from the bats, the nocturnal flying mammal point of view, the bats can be impacted so much just because of the nocturnal nature, but also they are in that space, the airspace where, the light really has an impact. So that's kind of where I started. And then the more I looked into it, the bats, there are quite a few great studies on bats in terms of light pollution. But what I noticed was this lights, the temporary intense lights that we use a lot in cities like sporting fields. There's actually not that much study done on them. And the nature of the light is so different from the street lights. So I started wondering that. And that's the kind of research that I'm doing now with my amazing students. And then we are starting to get into things like light festivals, it's even more acute, right? Or fireworks, for example. So we're starting to get into that kind of area of study now.
Or lighting up the side of a sound, right? Isn't that the thing that happened down in Australia this past a few months back, right?
Oh, you're talking about the Albany ones?
Yeah.
Or things like that. Yeah, it's happening a lot. It's becoming more and more popular. I guess I don't think it's just in Australia, but worldwide, just light show or, laser shows, even using drones, all of those things. We enjoy it. And I can see, humans are philic, we like light, but a lot of animals, especially in Australia, most mammals are nocturnal. It's having massive impacts, but not much studies been done. So that's where we really want to focus on now.
I was up at that time, right?
Yeah.
Talking about light festivals is one thing I didn't include in the show because it's unfair to pick on a certain group, a certain organization many times in the show. But there's a certain organization, I'll leave you, the listener at home, to figure out who it is, in San Francisco that set up for, I believe it was a certain time period for maybe a couple days or that around. And they had a pride kind of LED flag, I want to say, going straight up into the sky for a handful of days. So supporters will see that in the show notes. But stuff like that it seems to be gaining traction, right? We had something similar in Florida earlier this year where they just shot lasers straight across into the ocean doing something similar. And it was, all night for a number of days. So good luck on trying to analyze that. I think that'll be important research. I mean, it's good stuff. Shane, you guys had a great show with David Nagler. And unfortunately, I have never met any of the Naglers. I know old timers that I observe with remember Al Nagler going to the observing field, hanging out with folks, showing them things, testing things with them and whatnot. How was that? What was that like?
Oh, it was great. I really enjoyed the conversation. And David is just a wealth of knowledge and just loves astronomy. Just loves looking through a telescope. And I think Al was the same way. I never had the opportunity to meet Al Nagler, but from what I understand, he's very much the same. And the passion for astronomy and just get out and use your gear type of thing was really, really awesome. I really enjoyed it. And I think he dispelled a number of myths that kind of exist within the amateur astronomy communities about never touch the glass on your eyepiece, never clean it because it's delicate optics. And David's like, no, you will not scratch it. You're fine. In fact, it's better to have a clean eyepiece than a dirty eyepiece. And yeah, it was really good. And it was kind of a unique way we did it too, because we have guests on all of the time and it's usually just, hey, conversation. And we just, whatever direction we go. But David really likes to connect to the community. So he wanted us to solicit for questions prior to him coming onto the podcast so that he can just blast through a whole bunch of those and provide responses to a number of different people. What I find really unique, especially in this day and age about TeleVue, the company that David owns, is that if you call on Monday, you'll talk to David Nagler, if you have questions about their gear. And it just blows my mind that, he's that accessible and he loves it. You could just hear the passion in his voice about that type of connectivity.
Well, even though I'm not in the astronomy community, I met Al once very early onto a NEAF meeting, and I don't know anything about astronomy, but to actually look through a telescope with one of those wide field telescopes is a very different experience than the narrow field cheap eyepieces that most people will be familiar with. It's an immersive experience, right? When you look through one of his eyepieces, really, really remarkable what he did.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I will venture to say that nearly every visual astronomer has at least one TeleVue, or they wish they had TeleVue eyepiece.
Just one? I've never met an amateur astronomer who really wish they had one eyepiece. They really have way more than one.
Yeah, guilty.
Yep, same here. But they're not cheap. So, I imagine people starting out, it's not, it's a pretty high price point if you get a whole set. But the impact that he had on bringing the stars to people can't really be understated. It is so impactful. And Ruskin, you just said something that I think a lot of people who think of astronomy, they may start out with something cheap and they get frustrated because it's just, there's always a kind of, it's not a good user experience. but Al Negler made it a great user experience. He found a way to get, over that hump. The only problem is it costs a ton of money because you're paying for precision. You're paying for good quality stuff, but it's...
No, I think the experience that's underrated is just lying out under the stars in a dark night or having some low power binoculars and scanning it, right? I probably shouldn't say this, but it's fun to look through a telescope, but it is awe-inspiring to lie out on a warm night and look up at the stars, right? That is what I take with me.
100%.
You don't appreciate processing images for days and days and days after effect.
There's a whole part of the astronomy community now that doesn't observe. They sit in front of computers and process data. And they don't ask a professional astronomer for the way around the night sky unless they happen to be an amateur. Like, go and ask an amateur if you want to know what that star is. It's what I've learned.
Yeah, there's been more than one night where I'll go on a dark sky trip with the telescope and never look through it. Because as you said, Ruskin, just taking in the night sky with your eyes is such a beautiful experience. And it's one that isn't that accessible to most people, right? Mm-hmm. You have to travel, you have to make effort to do that. And it's amazing. And I sometimes, I know the night sky fairly well to navigate and, where objects are. And when I get to a true dark site, I get lost because of how much more I can see, and it's disorienting in a great way. And there's many nights where the telescope doesn't get much use.
Yeah, it gets so dark, the constellations disappear in a river of stars. Mm-hmm. It's amazing. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, there's another name here that we have a story on who also I think has been impactful in amateur astronomy and in people's use of understanding, getting out and actually participating in night sky, be it with a telescope, be it not with, just be it laying around in the field somewhere, just looking up. And that is the name Attila Danko. And Shane, I'm sure this rings a bell on your end.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Creator of the Clear Sky Clock, a great tool for astronomers around the world.
Yeah, Danko, obviously best known for that. And he created that while working at Nortel Networks, writing code while joining forces with Alan Rahill of the Canadian Meteorological Center, leveraging Rahill's forecasting algorithms. The two men created that chart it has color boxes that inform the user of specific sky conditions for each hour of the day. For those of you who have been using astronomy, Shane, I can't recall if you said it was Clear Sky Clock, Clear Sky Chart now, but old timers or people like me may still call it Clear Sky Clock. The name changed sometime back when the internet was still kind of fun, back in 2008. His contributions to astronomy went beyond just making a highly valuable tool that we use still to this day. I still use that Clear Sky Chart. He no doubt inspired countless folks to go out and observe. He built a community through the chart that allowed anyone in North America and the Caribbean to, with an observatory, be at home, professional, whatever, to add their spot to the chart. And you could actually look at the locations. Didn't matter who you were. Unfortunately, he passed after a battle with lung cancer in November 28th of 2024, despite never being a smoker. His legacy still lives on, however, and not just through the Clear Sky Chart, but also in Southern Ontario at the Lennox and Addington County Dark Sky Viewing Area. When he passed, his wife, Ingrid, succeeded him and generously donated the 25-inch Obsession Dobsonian telescope to the facility for use. Technically, it was donated by his estate. The telescope, which has been named the Attila Danko telescope, is a nod not only to his revolutionary weather app, but also to the multitude of hours of outreach he participated in with the community. It'll be stored in a newly constructed, and this was interesting, I thought it was kind of neat, storage facility that was named in his honor, the Attila Danko Deep Space Port. I thought that was all pretty neat. I feel like he's made people like Negler, Danko, these are individuals who came up with, they had ideas and they just went out and did it. And it's been hugely impactful in so many people's lives.
The Clear Sky Chart is huge. It's a wonderful resource to plan a night of observing. Like you mentioned, Bill, it will show you by the hour all of the conditions. And, the obvious condition is, are there clouds? But transparency and seeing is really important to anybody with a telescope. And, it can dictate what you'll look at. If seeing is really good, then I might be very interested in solar system things like planets. But if the seeing is poor, probably more into the deep sky, and, transparency is really good. You can really start cranking the magnification for some of those galaxies, and, the clear sky chart just dials all of that in for you. And unfortunately, with all of the forest fire smoke, that's become a problem too, but that's now been integrated into it to help predict when the smoke may or may not be around. So yeah, super valuable resource. I love it.
And the Lennox and Addington County Dark Sky Viewing Area sits roughly in what's a Bortle 2 to 3 zone, somewhere in that range, created roughly 15 years ago for folks to simply observe. They run programs through there, and I believe you can just show up also on any given night with a telescope, bring it there, and just observe on your own. Ruskin L&A County Dark Sky Viewing Area is one of the few places that I'm aware of as a dedicated astronomy recreation area. Sure, we have dark sky areas, we have glamping areas, we have resort opportunities, like you can do whole package deals. But this is something different. This is something where individuals who typically don't have access to all of that fancy, high-priced stuff can just go, and if they want to sit in the field, they can look up. If they want to bring gear, they can go and actually practice a hobby. They can have fun. They can do astrophotography, whatever they want to do. There's only 2 other places I'm aware of in North America, and that's Cherry Springs, which is one of the places I go to. And then you have Deer Lake Astronomy Village down in Georgia. When I look at other hobbies, like, say, trout fishing or these other hobbies that go hand in hand with ecological protections and trying to have environments that are very favorable to their hobby, I wonder if some of these dark sky areas are really missing a opportunity to create places for people to recreate, not just go camp, right?
Yeah, it's great where these places are really inviting people to come in and enjoy the night sky, made accessible like that. We did a survey back in 2023 of our international dark sky places. At that point, I think there's about 210 at that point. And what was really interesting around that is about 64% of those places had some form of astrodourism activities ongoing in there before they became certified as an international dark sky place. So often people are coming to this, they're coming together to enjoy these dark sky resources. Maybe they're doing night hiking. Maybe they have a small telescope village out there. Maybe it's around a professional observatory, but that activity was happening first. And then they came together and used the International Dark Sky Places Certification Program to build out the protections that need to be put in place to ensure those places are protected long into the future. I mean, I'd been, in my time at Dark Sky, I'd been very fortunate to visit some of these dark sky places. I remember being out in Austria, out in the Alps there, and they built a beautiful stone viewing bowl. This thing was probably about 20 foot around, a gentle bowl where you could go out and you could lie out and someone could give you a night guide there as you're lying on your back looking up at the stars in the Alps there. Or down in New Zealand, the Araucade Mackenzie Dark Sky Reserve, where hundreds of thousands of people come to the Dark Sky Project there and go out every night to enjoy looking through telescopes there. So many of these places are embracing dark sky protections and tourism facilities as part of that, either put on by the park agency or often put up by private businesses. I was in New Zealand in the one of the islands off Auckland. It was a dark sky reserve, and went on an evening trip on the beach there with 2 Dobsonian telescopes and some thick blankets. It was remarkable, right? So, and what I would encourage, I know many of the local astronomy clubs, the amateur astronomy clubs, do have viewing sites. It would be fantastic if those clubs could then become advocates to building out the protections around those viewing sites, working with the cities and councils to put ordinance into places and getting recognition through Dark Sky International for their efforts.
Yeah, that would be phenomenal. The more, I think, if people can do more than just see it as a place a one-time experience, right? They see it as a place that they can return to, and they have some kind of practical attachment to it. Shane with his observing list, or maybe just a family that likes to go under the sky, once a year, just want to see the meteor showers or what have you. I think in my mind, that's more impactful than a glamping setup where it may be a passing fad per se.
No, I mean, a glamping place. We worked with Unger Canvas to certify some of their places, build out a DOSCO lodging program. There's a place for that. There's a whole bunch of people in the cities who don't want to lie on a tent. Like, I love tent camping, and, if you don't like tent camping and want to go out and experience something different, you can go out and have a nice 5-star experience. And yeah, so that is, I guess, encouraging. There are different points of entry for different people who are interested in different things. Right, so that's nice about the dark sky community, that it's not just astronomers. It is much broader than that now, and so there's many points of entry to this work.
Yeah, I know what you're saying. I had a friend today tell me that they wouldn't be able to camp out in the field because they wanted to take showers every day, and I was like, just got to kind of own it. That didn't go over
Bring a sun shower. Bring a sun shower.
I know what you're saying there, Ruskin. That's a really good point. Since we're talking about astrotourism, Saudi Arabia is planning to bring to life a new astrotourism facility in the northwestern region, which is the Alula. Is that how you say it? The Alula region, called the Manara, which is the Arabic word for lighthouse. The design was created by an outfit called Heatherwick Studio. And this facility is really interesting. My first thought when I saw it was like something straight out of Dune. The only comparable way I can explain it to you at home is, and I know there's a exceedingly small amount of the population who knows about this game. It's an iPad game. It's a great game. I highly recommend it. But it reminds me of this facility in a game called Samaroost, where the main piece of it is this giant refractor sticking up out of a hut. But instead of a hut, it's a giant refractor sticking up in every direction, kind of like that. There are these giant tubes sticking out of a main body in pretty much every direction. They're all different types of sizes and everything. And the goal is to build an observatory, not just for scientists, but for laymen. And on the site, nearby site in the same area, they'll have 3 telescopes, one 4-meter telescope, 2 2-meter telescopes. And that's pretty amazing. That's pretty amazing that this setup here. It's an insanely ambitious project. And if anyone can pull it off, it's probably the Saudis. First, when I looked at this, Ruskin, I was like, this is not real. Like, who thinks about this and says, I'm going to build this? It's like something AI generated. Ruskin, you just came back. You were up there recently, I think you were saying.
Yeah, I was out in, I've been to Saudi a few times. I was out in Alula about 18 months ago. It actually was the first international dark park in Saudi Arabia. And so they're real about this. I mean, they're serious about protecting the skies. In this area, we actually went out to the site that the observatory will be built. It was spectacular. This is not a particularly high elevation site. It's not a high elevation mountain, but it is out in the desert. And when the sun went down, the sky was spectacular. I was there with a board member who'd probably hadn't been out to see the Milky Way since he was a kid. It was almost moved to his knees, right? It was a very profound experience. But what's interesting in Saudi, that they're embracing night sky protection and dark sky protection in this instance for astronomy, but also to protect sea turtles on the Red Sea coast. Some of the reserves there, again, like Kaori was saying about the nocturnal animals in the hot desert, a lot of nocturnal wildlife and species, they want to protect these, and actually for culture and heritage. Right, so Alula is on the old spice roads. If people have seen Indiana Jones and Petra, the same civilization that created Petra created tombs and facilities down in Alula. So it's a very rich history and rich culture in this area, and they recognize that protecting the night sky is part of protecting that cultural heritage there.
Amazing, man. One day, look forward to maybe stepping over there and seeing it.
I thought it said the same thing. Before I read your note, Bill, I thought this is something straight out of Dune.
Oh, right. All right. It's not just me. I'm glad.
No, not just you. It's 2 of us.
Before we leave the astrotourism, how about this over in the UK? The North York Moors National Park has been working with farmers to reduce the impact they incidentally have on light pollution. The problem is that farmers in this area, get this, they face issues from equipment and livestock theft. So obviously people, are concerned about livestock theft. So they put up lights because they think, it will deter blatant crimes under the light. What the North York Moors group did was they said, hey, you know what? You won't put these lights up. That's fine. Let's work with you on getting some good, aim the lights in a good way and have a good setup so it doesn't increase the light pollution. Since 2021, the park has successfully worked with over 20 farms, helping them improve their lighting situation through downward fixtures, shielding, etc. Also enabling some of these farms to recognize additional opportunities because they fix their lighting so they could venture into things like bed and breakfast type markets that are, I know, are becoming popular in many of these areas for people with land. I'm not aware of many areas being that proactive, looking at as a natural resource, being that proactive with the communities within their borders. Ruskin, there are other communities out there that kind of do as much as North York Moors do?
Yeah, I think, thank you for sharing that story, Bill. It was a great story. The North York Moors is an international dark sky reserve as well as is the Yorkshire Dales National Park. Actually, I was there this summer. My parents lived there. And I think there's a lot of unsung stories happening out there that people are probably not aware of. So in this instance, yes, they're working with those farmers. Those before-after photos are remarkable. They're a great example of what good quality light looks like. In the small town of Sedbo, where my parents lived, the community worked to change out its streetlights to full cut-off, no clear glass, 2200 Kelvin fixtures. And my mum noted, I can't see the sky glow over the town anymore. And here in the United States, Big Bend International Dark Sky Reserve, there's a very active program run out of McDonald Observatory where that dark sky person there is working very closely with actually people in the oil and gas industries to do exactly the same thing, right? Take those fixtures that are tilted up, tilt them down, wall them up a bit, dim them down a little bit. And so I think there are more stories out there that we're probably aware of. And again, this is the concept of these dark sky reserves. These are places where you can go and see examples of good quality lighting. And these are stories that we need to be celebrating.
Yeah, one thing I thought was really neat about that area too is that they have a really detailed Google map, like a kind of they're using the Google Map API to create a dark sky friendly map showcasing all of the things you can do in the area. Another great way to kind of promote those businesses and the, what's going on in that park.
What's great about that is like anyone who's been to Northern England knows that it's pretty cloudy. So they're having to be innovative. There's not like the Colorado Plateau where you have 330 clear nights a year, right? This is Northern England where you have to get creative and innovative. Yes, they have an observatory there. I think Northumberland has the Kielder Observatory. So yes, there are starving opportunities, but they have to get really creative about how to keep their guests happy in these dark nights.
So it's like 3 clear nights up there. How many are we talking about?
Maybe you should go to Clear Nights and find out, see what that clock says.
Perfect Sammy. That's very nice. I like that. Kaori, I love the fact that you're passionate about ecology, and we haven't really spoken much about that until now. So let's get into some ecology news, right? Let's dive in here. I saw this story, and I know, you're about bats. You like bats.
Yep.
I never made this connection, so let me get into the story real fast. I'm not sure how popular tequila and mezcal are down in Australia. I know I have a great fondness for mezcal. I do not drink much of it, but I do enjoy when I do drink it. It's just got there's a nice spicy character in just the darker tequilas and the mezcal and everything. I never knew, and probably I just never thought about this, that bats were both involved in getting the short end of the stick here. Specifically, 2 bat species are involved in pollinating the agave plant. That is the plant from which tequila and mezcal, the sugary components, source from. Those species are the Mexican long-nosed bat and the lesser long-nosed bat. Now, to be clear, what you're buying in a store it's not pollinated by a bat. Instead, farmers use cuttings to produce genetic replicants of these plants and helping to preserve the sugary consistency between batches. What that also does is reduce the genetic diversity of the agave, and it takes quite a number of years to produce flowers from that actual agave plant. So during that time, the plant produces sugar-dense cores. Those cores are then harvested prior to flowering for liquor. However, out in the wild, where the agave grows in colonies, the LA Progressive mentioned that bat pollination produces nearly 3,000 viable seeds for every 1 seed produced by non-bat pollination means for the agave plant. The bats benefit from their relationship with the agave plant. High in sugar fuels the bat's energy needs. However, where the story for the LA Progressive may have ended, it got me questioning the light pollution angle. After all, bats are practically a marquee species of an example of many organizations, including Dark Sky International here with us. But I couldn't find one study on how light pollution affected these comparatively economically important species of bats. I thought this was really interesting. Mm-hmm. No one's looked at that.
Yeah, it definitely is interesting. And can I start by talking about bats? Because we tend to just say bats, right? And we tend to have this one image of, this dark, winged creature at night. But when we say bats, we're talking about over 1,400 species. And a lot of people don't realize how diverse this group of animal is. So we can't just say one thing about bats because we are talking about this many diverse, second largest mammalian order. And just a comparison when we say order carnivora, so any canines, felines, anything like bears, lions, wolves, even seals, that order only contain less than 300 species. So just, in comparison, you can see how wide, the diversity of animals that we're talking about. So we can't say one thing about panda bears, lions, wolves, and seals. Same thing, we can't actually say one thing about bats. So then based on that, and all bats are impacted, but not many species actually have been studied in general in terms of bats because just there are so many species. And I did, once I got this article, I did look in a little bit into, Mexican long-nosed bats and see if there has been any studies on light pollution. And yes, I couldn't find any, but based on what their habitat, preferences is like, what they eat, they probably would be very, very sensitive to light because they are cave-dwelling bats. So they roost in caves. And especially the females, they migrate over hundreds of kilometers for reproduction. And they move up northwards to this, what we call maternity roost, where a lot of females congregate in a cave. And then that's where they, give birth to pups and then they raise pups. And that's a really, really, as you can imagine, significantly critical habitat that we need to protect for the species. Many, many studies or several studies worldwide have done on cave-dwelling bats. They are very, very sensitive to any light pollution near or at this maternity roost. And some studies have even found complete abandonment of these maternity roosts, which means these thousands of bats congregated there, they just abandoned that, generation pretty much. So it's a big impact on the population. So I can easily imagine that any light pollution, especially on this really important migratory route, I think it's called, the nectar corridor from like Mexico into Northern America, US. And that corridor, as well as all those, important areas of maternity roost would be really important and just really need to reduce and minimize the impacts of light in that area, I think, because, otherwise you might not have the tequilas or mezcals that you love.
I don't want us to have the agave plant go extinct. We need to preserve this thing. It's very important for our society that we preserve agave. I see Shane nodding over there too. It's incredibly important. There is a movement that actually is trying to bring back the bat's role in working to create, trying to reproduce this plant for the industry. The Tequila Exchange Program, which has a bat-friendly label. So next time you're out there buying your tequila and mezcal, look for this bat-friendly label where the maker allows for 5% of production to the agave plant to a fully flower for the bats to actually be able to work with the nectar in there. But you mentioned something about this maternity cave, and I think that's something that maybe many listeners aren't familiar with. Can you elaborate a little more on how the light disrupts or what artificial light would do in that situation?
Yeah, so if you think about these bat species that roost in caves, when they're active, they are at nighttime, so they're used to the dark, right? And then during the day, when they're roosting, they're also in the dark, because when they're roosting in the cave, they tend to go deeper and they need very specific habitat condition to do with temperature, relative humidity, but also light levels. And they're very sensitive to changes for the, in those microhabitats. And several studies are done before in different species. As soon as you put light inside or near the entrance of these caves, that really disrupts the bat's natural behavior. And then, for example, they start coming out later during the night. So they emerge later, which can have a massive impact on these, especially pregnant or lactating females, because they need that energy, right? They need to go out there as soon as it's dark and start feeding and then come back to feed a pup or, rest. So that delay can have big impact, or they might change the route that they take to actually emerge from these caves if there's light. And that route can be, more risky in terms of predation, or can actually take longer. So again, energy cost is much higher or can be higher. And that again can have impacts like, failure in terms of reproduction, actually the bats, starving to death. So sometimes if it's severe, they can actually abandon those caves, and that whole generation, next generation is gonna, disappear because there's no pups. Lights around those caves especially can have massive impacts on bat species.
Wow. That's good to know. Thank you for sharing that. I think that's something that I know I haven't discussed much on this show. So thank you for bringing that into the picture. Birds are always a big topic here. I have a duo of bird studies. First off, from the Journal of Environmental Zoology, assessed whether dimmer artificial light at night causes less metabolic and behavioral harm than brighter light. Over the course of 3 weeks, it looked at 28 zebra finches and split them up into 4 nighttime conditions, one being in complete darkness, one being in conditions with 2 lux light, one being night conditions with 5 lux light, and one being night conditions with 8 lux light. So to put in some context, you'd expect 2 lux to be a full moon, 5 lux to be night light, 8 lux to be a moderately lit hallway.
Full moon's more like 0.3 lux.
0.3.
Very
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank
2
you for
lux
your
is a
update.
lot. That's multiple full moons.
Well, when you have 16 full moons, it's about 2 lux. And oh, thanks for the correction there, Ruskin. I really appreciate it. The birds under any nighttime condition shifted their eating and activity into dark hours. They also tended to sleep in shorter spurts. Those birds gained body mass, accumulated more fat, and showed elevated blood glucose, along with changes in genes governing how the body processes glucose and fats. This is notable as these birds didn't actually eat more food over 24 hours versus the control group. Rather, the timing of the eating, not the quantity, drove the metabolic disruption. Just one little note on that. As I mentioned, beginning 28 zebra finches, so a small sample studied here. Then over in ornithological applications, a team looked at this. I really found this one interesting. The team looked at how changing color or surface patterns of an illuminated wall could reduce collision risk by the leeches, storm petrels. These birds are sparrow-sized seabirds that tend to remain nocturnal when on land. The team suspended a large cloth over 40 nights in 2024 and 2025 in Nova Scotia, cycling a white LED floodlight on and off for 5-minute intervals while rotating white, beige, and black sheets, then plain, striped, and gridded patterns on these sheets. They found that birds were 9 times more likely to collide with lit streets than unlit ones. Black surfaces reduce collisions by 66% compared to white. Surfaces with patterns also reduce collisions by 58 to 68% compared with plain sheets. The interesting thing is about this finding, perhaps intuitive given their nocturnal nature. When lights come on, the birds scatter, and when the lights turn off, the birds return. But however, when these lights were off, there were far fewer collisions. Researchers take this to mean that artificial light disorients the birds rather than attracts them. And I think what they're saying there is that the light is hitting them, and they can't actually, they're not able to visibly discern what's going on. And that's why the patterns actually present some kind of way for them to see what they're flying into.
Yeah, I think so. And I think it's really clearly telling that it's the glare that's the issue. And, it is actually, I think, the authors made the same conclusion that it's that they can see better or they can't see in the darkness, but it's more about the light kind of disorienting them and kind of removing or reducing their ability to actually see the object in front of them and actually avoid that object while flying. And that makes sense, right? Like, especially the nocturnal. And we did mention earlier about the other study, with the dim light, we call it. But as Ruskin, pointed out, what we call dim light is actually not that dim, especially compared to things like full moon. So it's only natural that animals who evolved with that, natural light, which is the very, very dull to humans, that full moon is impacted by this really bright light that we're putting out. And if you think about glare, and even for humans who are, diurnal and our eyes are adapted to brighter light, when we are driving at night, and then there's a car coming from the other way, And then if they have really bright headlight on, we actually have to tell our brain not to look at the light, right? And keep looking at the front. So we are naturally attuned to get distracted by this bright light. And that's probably, similar process probably is happening for these birds. And I think it's completely natural that it is, happening for these birds as well.
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah. And the finches, I think it was finches that they looked at with the first study. What they're experiencing is pretty similar to what we hear about humans too, right? When we have the blue light in front of us, and then our sleep gets disturbed, we get fat, we get unhealthy, all those negative impacts that it has on our bodies. It's not just humans, it's all animals that are experiencing this. And like that small amount of change in light, like I said, full moon, and a lot of nocturnal species especially change their behavior based on the moon phase. They are that attuned to the small change of the light levels. So there's no wonder why, when we put in this 2 lux, 5 lux, 10 lux, or even a lot more brighter lights out there, that is having a big impact on all sorts of animals.
Ruskin, thank you for correcting me on the lux that you said is 0.3, right? For full moon?
I'll double check, but it's significantly less than one. And what Kaori said, like the full moon is only up in full for one night per month. Right? So if you actually look across a whole month, the natural state is the moon is not up from very much of the month. So one full moon for one night a year is the brightest any of these creatures have experienced in the natural environment. And for 95% of the night of the month, the light levels are much, much lower than that. And I wanted to pick up on one other thing Kaori said, kind of with respect to the bats and Bridget to the birds, the energy use for these foraging species, or in the case of birds migrating species. There's been a lot of focus with birds about the billion birds a year that are estimated because they get collided with brightly lit buildings, the work that Flap and others have done up in Canada. There's been less studies, I understand, at the moment in terms of the energy dynamics of these migrating species. That they're finely tuned to migrate long distances. If they have to be diverted, well, we know they're diverted off their course by brightly lit cities, not individual buildings, the sky glow of a city. If they have to go further, they might not be. They're not colliding with a building, but they're using more energy. They might not even have enough energy to do their reproducing thing when they arrive. So there's all these subtle changes going on in the environment, and it's the cumulative impact that is probably leading to the massive decline in birds that we're seeing across the continent.
Yeah, and also that, the energy reduction or the energy cost, but also the time it takes to migrate as well, because these migration events needs to be really synchronized, right, between male and female, or all these birds that might be coming from different areas. They need to get to one point at the same time to actually breed. So if some birds are delayed, that can also have an impact in terms of the breeding success. So light could actually be causing a lot of issues from different perspectives, and we just don't know about it, or there's not enough study being done.
I think the ecologists call sort of these are sublethal effects, but the cumulative impact across the population is significant.
Another optimistic way to jump over to the plug section of the show. Well, thank you both. This has been really great to kind of hash through some of these items. And Kaori, your descriptions are really, really intriguing, and they are down to earth, I think, for the listener. So thank you for some of those details in there. I have one more article. I want to get to the plugs before this. One more article. It's an obituary. It's a sad piece. Why not? That seems to be the theme of both these shows towards the end. I apologize for that. But yeah, before we get there, Kaori, how can people find out about the research you're doing and learn more about what it is you're up to?
Yeah, so probably the best place to find out what I am up to latest would be my LinkedIn profile. Unfortunately, I don't have my own website or anything. I probably should get to that. But yeah, at the moment, LinkedIn. So if you find my name on LinkedIn, I'll be posting, anything, latest thing that I am doing, or any news that I find that that would be interesting. So that probably would be that. But also my official, profile page through Deakin University, that will list a lot of things that I've been up to as well.
Hey, Shane, how can people learn more about the Actual Astronomy podcast? If they want to listen, where can they go?
We're on, I think, just about every podcasting app out there, so pretty easy to find it. Just search for Actual Astronomy and it should pop up. Or go to our website, actualastronomy.com, and you can listen there, and we do post occasional show notes for reference as well.
And you guys were doing a email thing off the website for a bit.
Yeah, you can sign up. We don't do anything with the email addresses. In fact, I don't even know how I can extract them out of the website. It just happens. It's magic. But if you sign up, then you'll get notified whenever we post something there. So
it's really good. It comes through as kind of like a newsletter. It's really nicely done because it's an actual blog post. So you sit there, you read through it, and it's enjoyable. Good work to you guys. Ruskin, how can people learn more about what you're doing? Find folks over at Dark Sky International. Any new things coming down the pipe that we should all be aware of?
Yeah, well, you can go to our website, darksky.org, or follow us on socials. On our website, you can find a Dark Sky place to visit. You can find one of your local chapters around the world. You can sign up for our newsletter and get tools and tips. Join our advocacy program. Join other people. Learn the tools and tips that you can pursue these activities in your neck of the woods. So a lot coming up over the balance of the year. We have just launched an activation campaign with Star Trek. It's the 60th anniversary coming up of Star Trek, coming up on September 6th. So we are partnering with Paramount to spread the love around that. Hopefully we're getting people to send in their photos of people doing Vulcan salutes around the world. There's going to be a world record attempt on Star Trek Day. So we're trying to make this fun, right? A lot of this can be very serious. So we want to make it fun. We want to provide new opportunities for people to engage, take some joy in this in this work. There's going to be some new learning tools coming later this summer, so that people can start to learn more about what dark skies are, what light pollution is, why it matters, and critically how you can work to solve it in terms of what the lighting solutions are. So follow us, sign up. You'll get to learn more as we head into the summer and beyond.
I saw that Star Trek partnership come out, and I was like, this is genius. This is great. Whoever flipped the switch on that one, give them a raise.
Well, I do tell you, it's the power of these Dark Sky places, right? The person who was working on this activation for Paramount had been to Joshua Tree, learned it was a Dark Sky park, and thought, wow, this would be a fantastic place for people to go and explore the cosmos, right? And so the alignment with the Star Trek vision and values was there from the start. They reached out to us, and we're really excited to introduce this to all the Trekkies out there. Get them involved in this effort, in this work.
And who isn't a Trekkie at this point, right?
Are they going to do the sensitive lighting solution on Enterprise or something?
That would be fun. I would love that.
Yeah, that'd be fun.
They did get a lot of the actors to record some pretty fun lines. I think of a little video we put together on our social, you could see a lot of your favorite actors talking about the value of responsible lighting and stuff like that in a fun way.
Nice.
So you're having fun with this.
Nice.
Shatner involved in it?
Not yet, but there was always hope, right?
Okay. All right. I heard he's putting out a metal album, so I'm looking forward to that. But we'll see. We'll see. All right. As we close out this episode, I have a sad piece here. There's a lady named Mona Kalo, whom most of you probably have never heard of. According to the CBC, Kalo's path towards conservation occurred after the death of her 8-year-old son in a speedboat accident. She fled the Lebanese Civil War, lived in Europe, only to return and witness a sea turtle walk on shore and lay eggs. And from that point on, her path was determined. She was hooked. She worked tirelessly to protect marine life, including the loggerhead and green sea turtles off of Lebanon's coast. Kalo founded the Orange House, a marine life conservation focused bed and breakfast. She recruited volunteer beach patrols to help protect and relocate turtles from human activities. She organized sea turtle viewing events for visitors. And Kalo worked hard to curtail coastal pollution, property development, and destructive fishing practices. Back on June 4th, Kalo, who was 76 years old, passed due to injuries sustained from a bombing when Israeli military strike hit her home. And I think the Manga Bay article puts it nicely. The turtles will come back without knowing any of this. Females that have hatched there decades ago may still rise from the sea on a dark night, find the same strip of land, and begin to dig. The eggs will need shade, distance, luck, and protection from teeth, lights, waves, and carelessness. Somewhere above them, if the work holds, there may be a square metal grid set in the sand by one of the people Kalo taught. I want to thank everyone for listening today. I want to thank you guys for joining me on another episode of Light Pollution News. I want to thank my guests, Ruskin Hartley, Dr. Kaori Yokochi, and the Actual Astronomy Podcast, Shane Ludtke. You can find all of the links for today's show over on the page. Light Pollution News is a listener-supported show, so if you like what you hear, why not help support the show? Our supporters literally keep us going, and you can learn more by clicking the Support the Show link in today's show notes. This episode of Light Pollution News was recorded on July 18th, 2026. Emily Byers and Laura Taylor are our social media volunteers. Kaden Baldwin takes care of the editing, arrangement, and all the audio for this show. And I'm your host, Bill McGeaney, reminding you to only shine the light where it's needed. I had one additional piece of ecology news that we're slated to talk about, but I didn't get to it just through time constraints or conversation purposes. That's usually how it goes. We get going in conversation. I kind of don't want to steer us, and I try and keep everyone on a certain time frame so that out of respect to the guests themselves. This one from Current Biology, researchers assessed how artificial light at night affects sleep behavior and neurological health of the common reef fish, the blue-green damselfish. These reef fish feed above coral during the day and seek shelter at night. Researchers use infrared video and machine learning tracking across both lab and on-site reef studies in the Gulf of Aqaba, Israel. They first confirmed the fish exhibited sleep-like states, then rudely exposed them to light. Under artificial light, the fish expanded their territory, became more aggressive, fed at unusual hours, and slept significantly less, effectively behaving as if night had become day. Most critically, sleep disruption correlated with elevated DNA damage markers in brain neuron samples in the area responsible for sleep-dependent DNA repair. These effects persisted across the 5 months of chronic exposure. The study did not show artificially directly damaged DNA, but rather it disrupted sleep from behavioral changes associated with the artificial light, which interfere with the brain's normal overnight cellular repair process, allowing damage to accumulate. So there you have it. Have a great September at this point, folks. We're at the end of August. Thank you.